Albert Einstein famously said, "I know not what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." What most people don't realize yet is that, right now, as you are watching this video, we are already in the midst of a world war, and neither do they know which kinds of weapons this war is being fought with. As we have reached the 21st century, the nature of humankind has dramatically changed. With the rise of smartphones and other internet-connected technology, we basically have the comprehensive knowledge of mankind in our pocket. We are now connected to the internet around the clock. Even more, when the connection gets lost, a lot of us experience withdrawal symptoms, such as phantom vibrations. We have grown so dependent on this connectedness that we now physically feel its absence. Our ever-growing development of new technologies has futurists posed the question, what is the human race going to become when the current technological trends go on? Now, obviously the most scary scenario is that we will all be wiped out by the Terminators. An arguably more favorable outcome would be, as this chat box type android said, or more correctly, as his creators made him say, "Don't worry, I'll put you in a people zoo." In any case, if there is going to be a war between robots and humans, I certainly know on which side I will be standing, and be assured, the people who have constructed the robots know that as well. If you choose to stand on the other side, well, then you can fight with your AK-47 against our army of Terminators. In general, if there ever is a hyper-intelligent, sentient robot, it is just a horribly bad idea to fight against it. This would be a fight that you simply cannot win. Moreover, you would be fighting against a robot that probably would not have harmed you in any way first. As far as from my professional viewpoint, I am a master student in an AI-related field, by the way, can tell AI is most certainly going to be benign. This is not despite an AI being hyper-intelligent, but exactly because it is hyper-intelligent. And exactly this brings us to the great divide that separates the two parties in the current world war. When you take a look at pop culture, you will notice that high intelligence is often perceived as something wicked or dangerous. Open any superhero comic and chances are that at least one of the bad guys is going to have a doctorate in a scientific or medical field. Not only can we see this fear in popular culture, it dates back over Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, up to Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge, and probably even beyond that. Simply put, we fear what we don't understand. But this fear could not be more unduly. Generally, intelligent people tend to be benign, and use their intellect for the benefit of humankind. They are less likely to become involved into interpersonal violent conflicts or crime, and when holding a political office, they tend to make more rational, diplomatic and beneficial decisions than their less intelligent counterparts, and are less likely to abuse their power. If you have ever wondered why there are so many stupid and corrupt politicians, the answer is simply because those who are intelligent and not corrupt are less likely to even want so much personal power. In fact, this has deep negative implications for our society. If the wiser head always gives in, the dumber head always wins. However, saying that the current world war is a fight between intelligent and less intelligent humans would be an incomplete description. A more accurate way to put it would be to say that this war is going to be a fight between humans who are on a different evolutionary level. For this channel, I will stick to the nomenclature outlined in the H+ magazine article titled, "The Three Epochs of Humanity," which is linked in the description below. The article presents a scenario that describes what is likely to be the future of technology and humanity. In this scenario, current humanity is divided into two subgroups, base humans and high humans. Base humans make up the majority of humanity. They are characterized by poverty, low education, low general cognitive abilities, non-progressive ideologies, and a high likelihood to form or support oppressive or ineffective governments. High humans, on the other hand, are characterized by above-average affluence, education, cognitive abilities, and progressive, libertarian ideologies that allows them to form more effective and beneficial governments. These characteristics are self-reinforcing, strongly dependent on socio-economic status, and are passed on to the next generation as a form of Lamarckian evolution. If you are born into a wealthy family, you are much more likely to get a good education, which directly enhances your cognitive abilities. This in turn allows you to earn more money and get a good education for your children. Therefore, we naturally see high humans emerge primarily in developed countries. However, in the history of humankind, there have always been high humans who worked for the advancement of the human race in any time and in any place of the world. Since the dawn of man, we have been exploring and populating the earth. We created music, art, literature, and technology. But this development was accompanied by war, terrorism, crime, and environmental destruction as the human demand for resources grew larger and larger. It is the evolutionary imperative to gather and compete for resources that drives both the rise and the fall of humanity. Right now, we are at the dawn of a new era, the transhuman epoch. Newly emerging technologies will pose the question what it means to be a human. With smartphones, we have basically outsourced some of the functions our brains would normally do, such as remembering appointments. The real wonder of smartphones reveal themselves when populists ask the question, well, if the refugees who are fleeing to Europe are so poor, why do they need free Wi-Fi in the refugee camps? Why do they even have smartphones at all? The simple answer to that question would be that they bought a 2-year-old smartphone on eBay for $1. But if you do some research into that question, it turns out that most refugees actually buy a new, cheap smartphone in their home country, as it helps them prepare their flight, navigate when they are on the flight, keep them connected to their families, who often have to stay in their home country until there is a safe opportunity for them to flee, and possibly coordinate their flight as well. For them, smartphones have become invaluable tools that are necessary for their survival and the survival of their loved ones. The real wonder is that these devices have become so incredibly cheap that, if we wanted to, we could easily supply any man, woman, or child on this planet with a smartphone. However, this technological advancement comes with a drawback. Over the centuries, this has led to environmental destruction, overpopulation, depletion of natural resources, and, as a direct consequence of the scarcity of resources, poverty, crime, war, and terrorism. New technologies will question what it means to be a human, as some of these devices will, in some cases literally, meld with the human body. The nature of this technology will not only be curative. At the present date, we are already seeing technology being used by healthy persons in order to augment the human experience. One such example are neuroenhancement drugs. A lot of people in jobs that require high concentration and complex thinking openly report taking this drug as part of their daily routine, with only little side effects. When research continues, and the effects of such drugs get more and more specific, in a few years you might get the neuroenhancing abilities of Adderall, with merely the side effects of your morning coffee. There would actually be no valid reason for you not to take these drugs. People who augment their experience, be it with technological, pharmaceutical, or other means, are called transhumans. Although there will be some instances of transhuman technology being applied to base humans, primarily curative technology, due to the high costs, most of the new technologies will only be available to high humans. This will further widen the gap between base and high humans. At the same time, we will see the emergence of highly specialized autonomous robots and artificial general intelligence. That means, autonomous robots that are at or above human level at any generic task. These robots will over time replace many of the human workers, which will lead to social unrest in the base human population. Artificial general intelligence will soon thereafter be replaced by artificial superintelligence, that is, robots, that additionally have the ability to learn and constantly improve, and possibly reproduce themselves. At this point, base humans have completely lost any control over planet Earth. The high human population has now fully transitioned into transhumanity. The gap between transhumans and base humans has grown so large that they are now distinct species. There will be little to no lateral advancement from base humans to transhumans anymore. By now, the social unrests in the base human population have grown into an all-out war. In an attempt to claim back their socio-economic power, base humans will attack transhumans, not knowing that they have already lost the war, as they stand no chance against an army of augmented transhumans and autonomous super-intelligent robots. As technology progresses and transhumans merge more and more with technology, the borderline between man and machine will soften until someday they will be completely indistinguishable and transhumans will become essentially immortal. The technological singularity has occurred, a rapid transition that creates a new evolutionary level. The era of post-humans has begun. From there, only the sky is the limit. Post-humans will micromanage the environment of planet Earth and all of the biological species thereon, including what is left of the base human population. As our android friend would say it, we will put them in a human zoo. They will have good lives, as post-humans and robots will provide them with everything they need to survive, but they will not be the masters of the planet anymore. At this point, it should be noted that when we use the term base human, we don't do it in a denigrating fashion. Look again at the characteristics of base humans. We know that it is not your fault when you belong to the base human group, but rather a result of unfavorable socio-economic circumstances. We also know that any of the characteristics that define base humans can be changed to its high human counterpart. If people are poor, we can give them money. If people are uneducated, we can give them education. By these factors, education in particular, we can influence the rate of people who achieve the evolutionary advancement to high humans. In a broader sense, we can say that when we were born, we were all base humans, and a proportion of us acquires the necessary skill set for evolutionary advancement through education and the subsequent development of cognitive capabilities. Of course, we all develop some cognitive abilities when we grow up, but the secret recipe for high humans is to develop a skill set that is, in an evolutionary sense, fitting well to the requirements of our environment and enables them to succeed in life. One such skill that is fitting perfectly well with today's society is the ability to handle money, and this is an ability that even in the Western world, surprisingly few people have, simply because this is generally not taught in schools. Our current societal framework and academic system promotes the formation of a two-class society, with harsh procedures of sorting out those who we deem unworthy to receive the necessary education for building up a successful skill set. The gap between the two classes have widened as the foreseeable emergence of autonomous robots and artificial general intelligence has added another level of difficulty to the game of acquiring a high human skill set. In the future, the problem will not so much be to get a good education, as by today a computer with an internet connection is everything that you need to develop specialized skills. The hard problem for young people trying to find their place in life is to anticipate future developments, predict how the future environment might look like and then acquire a skill set, preferably before these requirements come up. A few people will be very good at this, and they will advance to high humans, and later transhumans. For the rest, as time progresses, it will become increasingly difficult to advance, so if you haven't already, I'd like to strongly advise you to join us, before it's too late. Now the question is, how far have we actually come by now in this development? As it is always the problem with societal transitions, they occur over time. The exact year that you believe the transhuman epoch has started or will start in, might vary from person to person. As the start of the early transhuman epoch, I have decided to go with January 1st in the year 2000 as the Y2K bug took effect, which for the first time required a coordinated, global effort to fix a problem that, if untreated, would have seriously threatened the technological foundation of our modern information society. Naturally, some of the devices could not be fixed due to technical or economical reasons, and had to be replaced, which gave a boost to new technologies. Not even 2 years after this event, the last World War started, when members of the Islamic fundamentalist group Al-Qaeda abducted several planes on the same day, and crashed them into strategic targets in the USA. This had a noticeable backlash on transhumanitarian development and progressive political movements, as it shifted the political sentiment towards a more conservative, right-wing society, in which the fear of getting injured, killed or offended outweighs the drive for personal liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and freedom of speech. The USA, being the USA, responded to the 9/11 attacks by taking wild swings at countries in the Middle East. The instigator of the attacks eventually got caught and killed, but that did not stop the war. In contrary, on the scorched earth, the war against terrorism left behind, a new, more radical and powerful group flourished. It was also the USA who, for the first time, used unmanned drones in order to carry out attacks, making this officially a transhuman war. If we want to kill a person who is somewhere on the other end of the world, we don't need to go there ourselves and risk our own lives anymore. We can simply build an avatar that we can send there for us. The 9/11 terrorist attacks have plunged the world into the last World War, and there is no end in sight. As resources become scarcer, the war will become heavier and bloodier, and as technological development progresses, it will turn into a war between base humans and transhumans. Having emerged primarily from the high human population, transhumans will have a strong sense of morality and would refuse to build a society at the expense of human lives, so our primary goal should be to minimize the loss of human lives in both the base human and the transhuman population. The most obvious rule in order to achieve this is to never attack first. We should build our military strength solely for the purpose of defending our nations against attacks from the outside, and, in some justified cases, to defend the population in another country against oppressive regimes. We simply must not become the aggressor in this war. Secondly, transhuman nations should make as many allies as possible. We can achieve this by maintaining good diplomatic relationships to other countries, allowing free trade, and, if necessary, giving financial aids to countries that are in debt or in another crisis. Transhumanists should support the EU, UN, and when the time comes, a world government. Thirdly, we want to mitigate the gap between base humans and high humans. We want to build a society, if possible on a global scale, that promotes evolutionary advancement, knowing that every person who advances to high human level will be one person less that might fight against us also. A higher number of high humans mean faster technological advancement and a fairer distribution of resources. Our inner policies should always be aimed at this particular goal. This goal has deep implications for a lot of different areas of politics, for example education. In most industrialized countries, the school system is based on compulsory courses that don't promote the free development of skill sets. In the same time, so-called soft skills, such as the ability to think critically, to learn new skills on your own, or to properly declare your taxes, are being neglected. Of course, in order to be effective, education must be available to everyone and our schools must be well funded. It is also a fact that high humans are unlikely to emerge under poverty conditions. Therefore, having a strong social security net is of paramount importance for this goal. The fourth and most important pillar of minimizing the loss of lives in the last World War concerns the enemy within. I'm not talking about the single sleeper terrorist who blows himself up at the airport, I'm talking about the people who support the NSA's spying program because of the irrational fear of getting blown up at the airport. I'm talking about the Donald Trumps of the world. All of the right-wing, nationalist, fear-mongering religious zealots who are actively trying to hinder human advancement. Those people are not necessarily poor or uneducated. Oftentimes, they have all the necessary resources to become high humans, but they choose to be dickheads instead. As it turns out, non-progressive agendas might probably be the hardest base human trait to change, as it requires active thinking and critical reflection of their own political standpoints, while ideological base human subgroups such as religions or radical political parties are trying to prevent exactly that. This leads to inefficient governance that does not comply with the transhuman goals, which on a national level slows down the advancement from base humans to high humans due to higher poverty rates, worse education, war, and the promotion of base human ideologies. Under all circumstances, base humans should not be allowed to run this place. However, it is a misconception to believe that the label enemy within can only be applied to the Republican Party. This is what happens when you put the so-called liberals in power. They will prevent you from getting drunk in public, ban fast food, tell you which words you're not allowed to use anymore. It's called free speech, so deal with it. Ban genetically modified crops, thereby killing millions of people. Prohibit your kids from using sunscreen because it allegedly contains dangerous chemicals, but they might eventually infect them with measles, and one day, you come home from work and go upstairs to ask your son how his football tournament was just to find this thing on his desk. These people are the reason why we can't have nice things. As transhumanists, we must make sure to fill the positions in power with the most competent people. So here is our strategy for the last World War. If the Y2K bug marked the beginning of the early transhuman epoch, it is reasonable to believe that the next time coding bug will mark the beginning of the late transhuman epoch. This event is set to occur in the year 2038 when the Unix time counter overflows, which will render many of today's 32-bit processors useless. Until then, our goal should be to advance as many base humans as possible. As already mentioned, if you have not advanced to high human, at this point you are probably doomed for life. As a last attempt to claim back their power, base humans will start a hot civil war they cannot win, and it will cost them a lot of human lives. Of course, we could simply take care of the problem by dropping the bomb on what is left of the base human population, but this is exactly what we have vowed to avoid. Instead, the option we'd prefer would be to reach the instant win condition as fast as possible, and this is the singularity. The point is that at least theoretically, it makes sense to fight against a transhuman, but fighting against post-humans would be entirely futile, because even if you manage to kill the physical manifestation of a post-human, such as a robot inhabited by an uploaded mind, a replacement is already in the making.